Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next session where we're deep into the heart of day two of the Device Authority Virtual Summit, focused on creating sustainability and protecting your supply chain. Today, I'm really pleased to introduce David Breaugh from Microsoft. He is the America's business lead for the manufacturing industry, spent a fair amount of time at SAP as well, and is really an expert on industrial, automotive, and other heavy industrial areas. Um, I think David's session today is really going to take a look at how a lot of the technologies that we've been exploring in these first few days are transforming the manufacturing industry with the advent of smart factories and sort of trying to realize the promise of Industry 4.0. So with that, David, I'll hand it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tyler, and thank you to the Device Authority team. I think we are very excited to share some of the things that we've learned. We're coming up on a new fiscal year, so I'm going to also provide a little bit of preview about what's to come. I think we're looking to learn as well from all of you in terms of where you're focused and what you're thinking about next in your journeys. What I've prepared today is really not so deep in terms of the technology itself, more around the application of the technology and some of the areas where we're seeing companies really unlock new sources of value. In addition to that, it would not be fair to not talk about the new sexy thing around OpenAI. I think I will share where we're seeing companies already start to deploy. I have yet to see anybody really do this at scale, but also maybe a preview into some of the roadmaps and some of the things that we're thinking about as we get beyond Chat GPT and some of the co-pilots that have recently been announced. So with that, let me open up. I think I will try to run through some of the content that I've prepared quickly, just to level set the audience. Hopefully we'll reserve some time at the end for some Q&A. And like I said, Tyler, please weigh in if there's anything that's a priority or any urgent questions that need to be addressed. Let me share my screen real quick. So like Tyler said, I am part of the worldwide manufacturing and mobility team here at Microsoft. I think that that has gone through a little bit of a structural change. In the past, it was manufacturing on its own. We have merged the automotive, mobility, and transportation team together over the past year. And so that's created a lot of insight beyond the factories. So while I will touch on supply chain, I think we're also looking at a lot of opportunity around unlocking innovation through connected products, digital engineering, and some of the other related areas that we're going to be seeing some great breakthroughs in the near future. I think most of you are seeing this in your own business and in industries around the move from optimization around really trying to drive cost reduction or working capital improvements into new types of operating or even business models. Like I said, that's created the new buzzword of a digital thread. And I will share with you in just a minute in terms of how that's influenced the way that Microsoft has been going to market in manufacturing industries in particular. I think we're seeing this accelerate with some of the impact of COVID over the past couple of years. The focus was really around how to respond. We're beyond the recovery stage in a lot of cases and really getting back to innovation in how to drive things beyond just new products, things like sustainability, new customer experiences, and service-based business models. We do have an active role in this Lighthouse network. I think some of you have probably been exposed to this. This is actually a little bit dated, but I think it probably does the best job to represent some of the learnings from the leaders that are really driving the way in this Industry 4.0 revolution. I think the thing that we're seeing is that not only have they been able to deliver step change around traditional metrics like productivity, throughput, yield, but they've been able to activate new areas of opportunity. So as you think about agility, time to market, being able to personalize products and experiences in more sustainable ways, we're seeing 2 to 3 kind of hitters in terms of where people are investing. So if you think about something where you could impact first time through quality, it could also have an impact on rework and scrap costs. And by the way, energy and water reduction as well. So those are the type of things that we typically look to target. I think there's a lot of different ways that we've seen companies deploy the technology. A lot of these are misdirected if you don't focus on the outcomes and be able to, in a lot of cases, quantify the target improvement levels right up front. You see the red line to the right here. There's also what's interesting and what's come out of some of the subsequent announcements around the Lighthouse Network is that as companies have deployed multiple production sites, they've also been able to uncover opportunities to integrate the value chain. So that's most pronounced in operations that are vertically integrated. But more and more, this is creating a new type of partnership with their own supply base. It's not just tier one, it's going, upstream beyond that. And then, like I said, it also starts to span the product life cycle. So when we see companies move from an operating model change to a new business model, typically that involves the upstream R&D and product launch functions, and can also have a big impact on primarily hardware businesses that sold through transactions to moving towards more of a subscription or a customer lifecycle based approach. So we're really seeing this digital thread come to life through more tangible capabilities and impact areas. We sponsored a survey. It was kind of in the middle of last year, but it was part of an IoT signals assessment. And what was interesting is that while we've seen the early adopters be able to deliver pretty significant improvements, their ambition is even greater. And so moving from a 15 plus level of improvement on their targeted KPIs to an expectation around 25%. These are pretty unheard of numbers for those of us that come out of a lean or a Six Sigma type background. Usually 3 to 5% improvement is pretty solid and can justify a lot of new investment. I think what's more kind of subtle is that we're seeing the focus on sustainability really being heightened as well. This was actually the number one area that companies are trying to integrate into their smart factory strategies. And then to do that, we expect a transition from the key dependence on machinery and equipment OEMs to being able to look at other more digital native or data centric type companies, software vendors, system integrators. So it doesn't diminish the role of the machinery and equipment OEMs, just says that the solutions of the future are going to be a combination of both. And as you can imagine, some of the key challenges remain. Most of the plants that we get a chance to work with, I would say 99 out of 100, are brownfield sites. So you can imagine most of them, the IT infrastructure has been built over decades. You get every flavor of machine, of application, of data connector that has existed in some cases. And so it's really hard to go in with one template or one architecture that's going to fit every site, even within the same company. I'll go down a level. I think this was one of the backup slides, but I will not drain it. Hopefully you can read a little bit of what's on the left, but essentially it's identifying what are the key technical challenges in smart factory initiatives. This includes both discrete and process manufacturing, but it's the usual suspects, right? A lot of this is around being able to connect, be able to integrate and interface with data, being able to connect that to the right applications, and then most importantly, being able to ensure data privacy and security along the way. So it's said in a lot of different ways. Hopefully that's my my narrative to kind of summarize what the key challenges are. So we don't see that changing. In fact, it's probably going to become more pronounced. And I will share with you at least my view on that as we start getting into open AI type capabilities. I did want to provide a little bit of thought leadership around process manufacturing. A lot of what you see in the popular press, a lot of what gets showcased in terms of Industry 4.0 always tends to focus on discrete manufacturers. So companies that build planes, cars, tractors, rocket ships. We're seeing actually a big interest from process manufacturing. So chemical companies, companies that make metals, paper, even glass are really, well, they were probably thought of as laggards, 3 or 4 years ago. We're seeing them really step up and do things at much greater scale. So the type of investments, the enterprise level transformation programs, at least from our perspective, are more pronounced with companies in these industries. And when you kind of cut through it, it kind of makes sense, right? They've been operating around some of the same rules in their industry for years. You can see that around the customer priorities. Their new product innovations tend to get commoditized, and so there's a need to refresh the portfolio. Cost is always a primary consideration in their customer buying behavior. And you can see some of the other things that are part of driving that cost reduction: labor, supply chain, even the way that they engage customers. And so what we're really engaging with them is a discussion more around transformation. And so you can see the 4 things that I've highlighted at the bottom here. It's really structural realignment. It could be a roll up across the industry. It could be a vertical integration play. That tends to be more than just M&A, the way that it's been done traditionally, where you're buying a brand or a product or being able to flip a company for a financial return. It's really getting more into the core of the cost of goods sold and the working capital and capital assets associated with being able to run a production network. The other ones kind of fall into line with what I already talked about. I think integrating operations. So you're breaking down some of the functional silos, not only internally within a company, but being able to extend the edge of the enterprise upstream and downstream, and then being able to look at sustainability and circularity. One comment here is, well, there's a lot of attention around carbon. We're seeing the short-term gains from a hard ROI standpoint really being realized around energy, around water, around waste. Carbon is a little tougher. You need to really design that into the products up front to be able to drive similar step change type improvements through a supply chain and into production operations. So I'm not at all saying that it's not important. I'm just saying it takes a lot longer for most companies to get there. And so they're trying to really build the foundation for those type of sustainability improvements on the backs of being able of more demonstrative ROI investments. So with all that being said, I think some of you have probably seen this. This is really the way that we've taken a lot of these market insights, a lot of what we've learned working with our partners and directly with customers around organizing a lot of our capabilities in these 5 different areas. We call these our industry priority scenarios. And while you can click down to a use case level, where we've seen the most traction is really being able to bundle use cases into standalone programs. And so, well, there's a lot of plumbing and foundation that needs to get laid. We're trying to make sure that it's not just an infrastructure investment, in that there are capabilities that can be activated to address immediate needs, while trying to really think about more chronic type opportunities that will take longer to go realize. So where I wanted to focus today was really concentrated in factories. I will touch on supply chains more from where they impact the receiving docks and the shipping docks of a factory. There's more and more opportunity to actually change the way that the shifts are organized, the way that lot sizes operate, even how changeovers happen in those plants. But there's a whole nother talk track we can go through around supply chain. So that gets more into network redesign, strategic sourcing, being able to multi-shore sources of supply. So there's a lot more we can talk about there. Just to level set, I think I was trying to stay true to the title of this session around smart manufacturing. So as we look at the existing environments in most plants, it really follows the traditional SCADA model, and so there tends to be air gaps between the control level and MES level, or MES level and ERP level. In a lot of cases, those are physical air gaps. It's not just a security layer. But what we're trying to do is really, like I said, go into a lot of these brownfield sites, be able to understand the way that work is getting done. The challenge with doing that, if your focus is OEE or other types of visibility and reporting, the problem with MES and ERP is they were designed from the start to be transaction record keeping systems. And so that data is all historical. Most of the real world activity is down at the device and control level. And so we're trying to really compress the layers of this architecture and be able to connect open loops. So this concept of digital control systems is something that is easy to look at within different areas. And I'll give you a graphic of how we're not only doing this, but being able to apply AI more tactically. It tends to take the shape of digital twins, or industrial metaverse is kind of the new buzzword, where we're looking at larger system optimization opportunities. And that's more pronounced, like I said, in process manufacturing, just by the nature of how those operations work. Where we're really trying to also consolidate, I think, this convergence of technology. So you see some of the things at the bottom. IoT and cybersecurity are more important than ever. In fact, there's more devices, more data formats. There's a greater need for real-time connectivity, but security, continues to be kind of the Achilles heel of companies that are looking to move more to the right at the bottom of this. So the data and AI piece, there's a lot that we can talk about there. I think what we see is the move from dashboards to report what happened and give visibility at a more granular level, to being able to move back to a zero-based time and being able to, like I said, close some of those loops between troubleshooting, identifying corrective actions, and then validating that a fix has been made. I'll talk a little bit more about what we see are the next waves of innovation as companies move from a cloud and edge type architecture into digital twins. And then the last two are really what are the core components of this industrial metaverse. This is kind of a busy chart. I'm not going to do it justice from an architecture standpoint, but I think one of the things that we're trying to do is be able to industrialize some of the horizontal solutions that Microsoft has gone to market with for a long time. Things like M365, Dynamics, and the Power Platform. Those tend to be really flexible type capabilities. It tends to fill a lot of the gaps that go beyond machines, getting into labor efficiency, getting into a lot of the losses that happen in the hidden factory. And so a lot of companies have been forced to go to teams. I think they've moved beyond just remote communications, and in some cases team collaboration, to being able to activate Power BI tools, being able to build into apps, and then being able to connect the apps into workflow where you can apply RPI like capabilities, right? Where you're starting to really automate and standardize the way that work gets done, especially across different functions. Dynamics has come a long way, but the core of this is really at the next level down. Is okay, I've got the data from a lot of the sources and devices at the bottom. I've been able to move it through the edge to the cloud. Now, what do I do with it? So that kind of rich area that we're seeing a lot of focus is around how do I model the data? How do I make it accessible to more people? This concept of frontline workers, and then how do I be able to see beyond what people already know? And that's where we're seeing machine learning, other cognitive services being applied. I think autonomous is still a dream. We are seeing customers that are doing that. Again, I wouldn't say that there's a company that's running lights out across their entire production network. There are companies that are doing that, at more than one site. So it is within grasp. One of the things that we've also done is really being able to, like I said, take the use cases and package them within programs. And so within the factory, there's really three big capability areas. One is just around getting that visibility. It goes beyond dashboards. I think I talked a little bit about that, but there's been a lot of attention around OEE. OEE is a great metric. It's very useful, especially for benchmarking, for comparative plant performance. It doesn't do a great job, again, in my opinion, of capturing labor efficiency. It misses cost and doesn't talk at all about EH&S or safety, related type objectives for companies. And so that's where we're seeing sustainability reporting be a nice addition to that. And then digital twins addressing some of the limitations of only looking at OEE at a machine level. When you think about assembly operations or operations where there's multiple routings and there's a lot of different complexity in terms of what gets built when and how you actually balance across multiple work centers, OEE can only take you so far. The productivity piece is where we're going from reporting to actually driving into improvement. Seeing more and more companies that aren't already on a lean journey trying to figure out how to accelerate that, and then being able to move beyond just predictive maintenance and downtime to full life cycle asset performance and cost management. And then optimized operations is really around, how do people do their job? So how does the plant run every day? Too often, it's still in an environment of heroes. I think I had a customer share that their best practice is defined by the person that fixes the problem first. So when you think about scaling, those break fix type approaches, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to system optimization in some of these larger, more complex operations. So that's where we're seeing more investment, along with some of our partners that are industrial automation companies that build the machines or robots, being able to really blend the hardware, the data, and then some of the capabilities within Azure and some of our cloud offerings. I think this is where we typically get involved with a lot of customers. Most of them have taken the move to get connected to the data that exists today. In some cases, that does go to a cloud. It's not always a Microsoft cloud. And a lot of companies have already decided to move towards more of a data lake construct. I think where they're struggling is trying to figure out, how do I not only take the data as it exists in an MES, ERP type system, or a quality system, but being able to make that more real time. There may be really important variables that influence operating performance that aren't captured today. So how do I create that data? How do I get connected? Like I said earlier, how do I make it real time in a secure way? That's an area that, obviously we can help, but I think to make this scale and be able to deliver value in a more sustainable way, a lot of the knowledge at the top is where we can provide some additional expertise around what does the right data model or data platform look like? How do you set that up, not just to report at different levels of aggregation, but be able to innovate and be able to simulate what might happen in the future before making the investments in tooling or moving equipment around. So the concept of simulation, and then a lot of the organizational pieces of this. I think the governance piece, it goes beyond data, but if the data is not right, everything else kind of comes crumbling down. So we typically start with that discussion. And then there's also a big cultural opportunity around not only being able to skill the people that have to learn new roles, but actually being able to design the roles to attract the talent that's hard to bring into factories today. So data scientists, AI model experts, people that are adept at cloud architecture, manufacturing, or going to work in a plant is not usually at the top of the list when they're coming out of school or looking for the next job. I think altogether what we're trying to do is really help companies get over the wall. That's kind of the dotted line in the middle, and be able to move beyond just the connectivity and reporting to how do I start delivering the insights? How do I start to take action or make better decisions to deliver the outcomes? Like I said earlier, I think where companies have been able to sequence this in the right way, a lot of these capabilities stack up on each other, and that's where you can start to deliver step change improvements around some of the metrics. But then being able to move into what's really the future around being prescriptive, and in some cases where to be autonomous. So in a lot of cases, autonomous does not necessarily mean that the cloud is controlling a piece of equipment. That's not a reality in a lot of operating environments. What it could do is automate a lot of the mundane activity around trying to troubleshoot, trying to collect data, do an assessment, and then identify what the right corrective action is. And so the acronym I like to use is MBO. So if I see an unplanned event, what is the next best option? So how do you take the data and be able to be prescriptive and almost prioritize what the right decision or next best option is? And so we're seeing a lot of interest in that as well. I want to use this as kind of a transition to get into OpenAI, but I think it goes back to what we've learned working directly with our customers, what we've learned from partners that are driving a lot of these innovations, and then, like I said, we're part of this Lighthouse Network. So this was some of the early findings probably 2 years ago, and I think it really sets up for the journey that a lot of companies are looking to go on in OpenAI. There is a lot of, I think, misconceptions. I think the companies that have been able to really deliver scale improvement have not looked at this as purely a headcount takeout play, right? While productivity is important and jobs will be eliminated, there is usually opportunities for new roles. And so being able to engage the people that really understand the operations early and bring them together in cross-functional teams is the way that companies have not only been able to deliver a new application or a new digital service, but being able to really mobilize the organization to a transformational journey. Being able to target the outcomes or the KPI targets upfront is critical. There's a lot of different ways to do this. A lot of the technologies are known and industrialized. A lot of this stuff is brand new. And so if you're not really focused on the right outcomes, it's easy to get misled. If you do launch a program, it's easy for scope creep to kind of infiltrate the charters and delay progress. So I think the other thing is that it takes a new type of a partnership between the business and traditional IT departments, where you're trying to innovate the infrastructure, both the business process design, the org structure, and the enabling technology together. In the past, in an enterprise application world, those used to be sequential type of things. So whether you're committed to a pure agile DevOps, like methodology, I think waterfall does not work in the world, whether that's a platform world, a data world, or an AI world. So with that all set up, I think what we're seeing as AI, I'll kind of transition to AI, is that there's a lot of AI in the plants that I get a chance to visit. I think they manifest in a lot of different areas. Again, I won't read through this, but the ability to move beyond dashboarding and reporting what happened to being more prescriptive and in some cases predictive. Quality is a ripe area that we like to target as a starting point. It's data rich, there's expert resources. Almost always, the results can be seen immediately. And then, like I said, it's a 2 or 3x hitter when you look at the value compounding that I mentioned earlier. I think that the assets are moving beyond predictive maintenance, like I said, and being able to really balance multiple work centers. That tends to have additional opportunity as you think about staffing these work centers, being able to better manage both product line changeovers and shift changeovers, and then be able to connect a lot of the material traceability. I think one of the big constraints everybody knows about is being able to get the right products to meet production schedules. We're doing a lot of work upstream in the supply chain to be able to not necessarily go replicate an MRP schedule or set of EDI transactions, but be able to isolate what are the critical components, how do you look beyond tier one, and then be able to orchestrate that across the production horizon so that you're ensuring the capability to build before production orders are dropped on the floor. If there is a disruption or a shipment that gets delayed or canceled, okay, well, what can I build with the components that I have? So being able to bounce that against the sales orders, the engineering bill of materials, and be able to make sure that you're not just creating WIP or having to, even worse, pull things off a line when they get midstream. Those are all areas that we've been talking about for a long time. It's been very difficult to make a reality without having to rip out a whole ERP system or try to go re-platform EDI into some kind of a supplier portal. And then the other area that's equally important is just around how work is getting done. So looking at ergonomics, looking at working conditions, safety, those are things that get a little sensitive in union environments, but are equally as important. I think that's something that I hear from almost every one of our customers, is that workforce is the number one issue. So making sure that people feel that they're coming into a safe place and that they're not going to be at risk when they're at work. As we look at AI, like I said, I think hopefully that last slide was some validation of what's already been happening and where companies are realizing value. I think what's really changed is that most of the underlying capabilities to power those type of scenarios have been pretty single threaded. So they're purpose-built services, in some cases applications, but the models were very much focused on the task at hand. And so they tended to cost a lot, and they tended to have a long deployment timeline because no two plants are alike. And so there was a lot of changes required to configure the models, to be able to find the right data, to train the models, and then to be able to manage and optimize them over time. What's changed is this concept of the foundation model. So, the GPTs are kind of the most well-known, at least currently, where we're integrating a lot of these standalone models into a foundation model, which is creating the opportunity for transformation. Along with that is this natural human interface where you can move beyond text and structured data into unstructured images, speech, the way that work actually gets done in these operating environments. So the challenge, I had to bring a little bit of humor into this. I actually saw it on LinkedIn last night, but too often this is the kind of conversation that I'm seeing happen. and so there's a lot of questions. I think it is the shiny new thing. Everybody's trying to jump in and take advantage to drive, not only operational improvements, but competitive advantage. I think there's a lot of risk associated with that. And when you get beyond the OpenAI kind of chat GPT acronyms into what is actually possible, the future is bright, but it's still pretty focused. And so I think it does complement some of the things that I already talked about. It does offer the opportunity to get into the way that people work. It does allow companies to start to really triage and address some of those losses in the hidden factory that are hard to see, where the data doesn't exist, where it's not connected to a machine. And so, with all of that, I think you've probably seen some of the headlines around the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI. That's taken a couple of different flavors. I think, part of our investment goes back, beyond 5 years. So this has been a evolving and developing relationship. But what we're really trying to do is take a lot of the capabilities that are available for free and can be downloaded today, but being able to wrap them into an enterprise grade level architecture that addresses the challenges that I outlined, earlier, around being able to really connect to different data sources, being able to integrate that to applications that already exist, and then being able to wrap all that around a layer of security and protection, so that if you're looking at generative design, you're not releasing the crown jewels of new product designs, right? If you're trying to do things in a supply chain, people don't have access to your supply base or a lot of the communications with that supply base. So there's a lot of things that still need to be thought through, even for something as simple as a co-pilot or a chatbot, type instance. I think the other thing is that we're really building this into Azure. And so for companies already using Azure, this is almost like a plugin, whether that's an API, whether it's the raw capabilities in tuned models, or whether it's a off-the-shelf application. That's the way that we're looking to really take these capabilities and make them available to Microsoft customers. When you break it down, there's really 4 top capabilities. I think a lot of us have played around with the summarization and search capability with some of the search engines. Hopefully you're using Bing or tried out that one. But where we're seeing the real breakthrough from a value standpoint is being able to generate content, being able to do deeper level search, and use that as a way to get into long tail type challenges. We've had some really interesting discussions, with companies that operate in the service parts business, companies that are looking to move towards more of a platform architecture where every product gets designed from scratch. The suppliers play a bigger role in terms of the components and subsystems. So if you look at more of a platform architecture, those were things that hit automotive 2 decades ago in seats and engines, and being able to enable part sharing. But that generative capability starts with search, and then can greatly facilitate some of the design cycles that will influence supply chains and manufacturing. As we go back into manufacturing itself, I think there's still a lot of turnover at the operator level. So being able to create work instructions that aren't paper-based, nobody looks at the books. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 3D model that rides on a HoloLens. We like that, but that's usually training. That's usually not on the job work assistants. But as you go back to where AI has already been deployed, being able to connect some of these isolated applications, being able to look at the management of production orders, a lot of the associated material movements, being able to look at not just downtime, but what about machine settings? What about the way that the machines need to be changed over when a new product is being run? Being able to look at generating new test procedures, being able to validate results. Maybe that's at end of line testing. It could be with cameras or things that are evaluating control limits within process operations. And then, another good one is for industries that are heavily regulated, being able to look at traceability and compliance. There's a lot of what most people would consider MUDA, a lot of waste associated with documentation and getting ready for audits. A lot of that type of activity is not directly related to production can greatly be simplified and hopefully automated moving forward. As we start to think about beyond the four walls of factories, I think there's a lot of opportunity around cross-functional visibility that will eventually mature into process optimization. In some cases, maybe operating model transformation, but continuous feedback to product engineering around how products are being built, how they're performing in the field. I think being able to really understand the calls that are coming into customer service, any kind of warranty claims, support needs, that tends to enable the product to be the voice of the customer, right? Those are digital feedback loops that are really hard to support today. And then I think this one's always been kind of a holy grail is once you move beyond the initial training and onboarding is how do you collectively create a culture of continuous improvement? So how do you capture, in some cases, maybe even record and apply proven troubleshooting techniques and be able to use that next best option around corrective actions? I think that has influenced this concept of prompt engineering. So if you want to use a GPT engine, if you want to make it chattable, then how do you actually design the prompts in the way that people communicate? That also provides the opportunity to maybe make it multilingual. So you develop it in one country and then apply the right translation capabilities so it can apply to others. And we're seeing companies do that, but too often it requires getting experts on a plane and flying them to another continent to be able to do some of that problem solving. I think there's others, but where we're going to see a lot of these capabilities get deployed is through co-pilots, and this is where we're seeing discussions mature too. Once we get through some of the awareness and technical discussions around where do I get the data, how do I protect it, how do I make sure that only the right people can see it, especially if I'm going beyond the walls of the enterprise. This is where we're seeing the co-pilots be a initial first step in moving beyond some of those standalone, type manufacturing use cases. What's interesting, here is that it also applies to some of the back office functions, HR, marketing, legal. If there's a sustainability office or EH&S office, those are all things that today tend to be done sequentially. There's opportunities to be able to start breaking down the walls of these individual functions. So like I said, I think the way that if you understand the Azure architecture, I mean, this is a very simplified version of it, but essentially these open AI capabilities, whether they're the APIs, the services, or the applications, are being built into different tool sets so that they're available off the shelf where that makes sense, or some of the components are available, for your own teams to be able to take them, be able to build better foundation models, and then be able to tune them along the way. I think along with that, we talk about the responsibility around AI. We've made multiple commitments and have our own office internally, to manage this. It's still pretty new, but that is something that we take very serious. I think it goes all the way back to our mission statement, really enabling others across the world. And then a lot of you have seen, Satya's commitment as well. So I think with partners like Device Authority, we're making this a reality, and hopefully, what I just shared goes beyond just IoT platforms and some of the dashboarding and reporting that you are probably already doing, but trying to figure out where to go to next. So I think that's all I really had to cover. Like I said, we can go into supply chain, we can go into some of the product engineering activities as it makes sense, but hopefully this was useful and hopefully provided some insight beyond what you already know.